Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Sanctuary. Today we're going to be looking at some more Dynasty content. The number one question I get asked without fail is how do I assess my Dynasty roster? Well, that's what we're going to talk through today. So first things first, let's go old school, okay? Everybody tells you go and assess your Dynasty roster. Nobody tells you how. Grab yourself a pen and paper, pull up your roster. Okay, write down the starting positions for each of your roster slots, and then add one backup for each position. So in a Superflex, you'll have QB1, QB2, QB3 as your bench spot. If you've got, two running backs, okay, the bench spot is RB3. If you've got two receivers, your bench spot is WR3. If you've got a flex, add a bench spot for one flex. So if you start two flexes, one bench spot. If you had three flexes, one bench spot. Therefore, you should have, if you start 10, you'll have 14 players. If you start 9, 13, and so on. Okay. Now, what I want you to do is put your players in each of those slots. So rank them accordingly. So your best quarterback in your QB1 slot, your second best quarterback in your QB2, your third best quarterback in your QB3. Okay. Now, I need you to go and get a set of Dynasty rankings. You can use mine if you've got them. You can use your favorite analysts. If you do your own, great, use those. Okay. Then what I need you to do is write down next to each player what that ranking is. So if you're looking on the screen now, I've already done it for you. So this is just a random one of my leagues that I've gone in. I've got my QB1, Lamar Jackson. He's my QB7 in my Dynasty ranks. So that's where I've got him. Okay. I will then work it down from there. So I've got Derek Carr's my QB2. He's my QB16. Ignore the colouring at the moment. I'll come on to that. My running backs, my wide receivers, tight ends. As you can see, in this league, we start 3 flexes. Okay. And then on my bench, I've got my QB3, my RB3, my wide receiver 3, tight end 2, and then one flex on the bench. Okay. Hopefully, that's fairly self-explanatory. You should then have a ranking, a positional ranking for each of those players. Okay. What I then do is I basically try to determine, do I have a positional advantage? Am I neutral or a positional disadvantage to the rest of my league for each of those spots? And I use a traffic light system. Okay. So QB1, do I have a positional advantage? So for me, I'm viewing that as any quarterback that I have in my top tier, I'd mark that as green. So that's Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow. If it's one of those 4 quarterbacks in my QB1, great, they're green. If it's anyone in my orange tier, which is kind of my second tier, so that means it's a neutral. I don't have against the average team, I don't have an advantage or a disadvantage. That's Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields. That's my tier 2 in my quarterback rankings. And then any other QB that I have as my QB1 would be red. So that could be, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, Derek Carr or Kirk Cousins, Trey Lance, whatever. They'd all be red. I then move to my QB2 spot. Okay. So obviously the QB2 spot, I'm looking for an advantage or a neutral or a disadvantage against other teams' QB2. So that's anyone in my top 4 tiers I'd class as a positional advantage, and therefore they'd be green. So that's Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, Burrow. That's my tier 1. They'd be green. Tier 2, Herbert, Lamar, Lawrence, Field. They'd be green. Tier 3, Watson, Dak, Kyler, Tua. They'd also be green. My tier 4, Kirk Cousins, Kenny Pickett, Geno Smith, Trey Lance, Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson. They'd also be green because they are giving me a positional advantage over anyone else. Tier 5, they would be orange as my QB2. And then anyone outside of that would be red. You can then complete that for your QB1, your RB1, your wide receiver 1, your wide receiver 2, and so on. And it should give you something that looks like what we've got on screen here. So as you can see, I've got an orange for my QB1 spot because I'm not an advantage, I'm not a disadvantage. For my QB2 spot, I'm green because Derek Carr is in my tier 4 of quarterbacks. So against an average team, Derek Carr is an advantage at QB2. At running back, I'm at a disadvantage of both those spots. J.K. Dobbins, he's my RB10. Therefore, I'm at a disadvantage every week against an average opponent, and so on. As you can see, my wide receivers I'm pretty stacked. Tight end, I'm neutral, and then down at the flex spots, I've got a couple of greens, another orange, and a red. Okay, that then gives you your traffic lights across your QBs, all your starters, and those bench spots. So one backup for each position. Now we switch to the second traffic light. So I use a 2 traffic light system. So the second traffic light, as you can see on screen, it says age, situation. I also throw in kind of contract there. So basically, is my player in a good, an average, or a bad situation for the next 2 years? And what I'm looking for there is kind of the 3 aspects. So age, are they basically going to age out in the next 2 years? So are they, only going to give me 1 year of potential? Is there any question marks about their decline coming in the next 2 years? Contract, are they tied up to a longer term deal? Could they potentially be cut? Are they on their rookie deal? What's the contract situation? And then the situation, have they got a secure starting spot? Are they going to lose their starting spot in the next year or 2? Could they be replaced by somebody else who's in the draft or whatever? Okay. And then I basically take, again, second traffic light. So green, basically someone that's under contract for 2 years. They've solidified their starting spot and they're not going to age out. Orange, it's okay. Maybe their contract's due up at the end of the year or in 2 years, or, there's a question mark there. Red, they're basically old, so they could potentially decline in value or production. There's maybe a question mark around their starting spot, or could they potentially be cut from their current contract? So let's talk it through on the screen. So Lamar Jackson, he's my QB1. I've put okay because contract's up in the air. As much as I'm pretty convinced he's going to be back with the Ravens, it's not for certain. Derek Carr, pretty much the same. I know Derek Carr is going to be a starting quarterback for the next 2 years in the NFL, but who knows where it is. So I can't say that he's got a good situation. J.K. Dobbins, again, pretty sure he's going to be the Ravens. Pretty sure they're not going to draft anyone, but who knows? They could go out and get somebody. A.J. Dillon, obviously the Aaron Jones situation is hanging over that. Wide receivers, CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, both under contract. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb on his rookie, A.J. Brown signed the long-term extension. Both got good quarterbacks that are tied in, both in good age profiles. They're perfectly green. Tight end, Dalton Schultz, free agent. Who knows where the hell he's going to be? Don't know if the Cowboys are going to re-sign him, so he's a bad. And then, there's some okay. So Jared Goff, again, is orange. Could the Lions replace him this year? Who knows? So you kind of get the point. And that basically gives you your 2 traffic lights. Okay? Now, what you then do with that is you then take a full review of where your team is at. So how many greens have I got? How many oranges have I got? How many reds have I got? Are they in particular place? So if you're looking at my roster here, I'm in a really good position from wide receivers because I've got a lot of green. But my running backs are a clear hole. I've got a position of disadvantage at RB1. I've got a position of disadvantage at RB2. And my RB3 is average. Okay? So running back is a position that I'd be looking to hit. Now you can take a look at your roster and work out, are you win now? Do you need to attack a certain position in the offseason? What do you need to do to basically turn your roster into a better situation? And it gives you a holistic view of the entire roster. For me, the way I build, I'm quite happy with this team. Yes, I know I'm saying I've got a glaring hole at running back, but actually, I'm quite a believer in J.K. Dobbins. I know I can go out and buy a running back in September, October if I need one to try and push for a title. With the wide receivers, I've got 5 elite wide receivers there. I think that those guys can carry me to a title or at least a contention spot, and then I can go and buy somebody. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully you will now be in a position where you can plan your off-season, plan your moves, work out where you're weak, work out where you're strong, try and get your Dynasty roster in a good place. So now rather than just being told, go and assess your Dynasty roster, you actually know how to go and do it.